Chapter 1. The Dawn of Remembrance. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of the last page, casting a warm glow over the cluttered shelves and worn armchairs. Maggie Sinclair, with her snow-white hair pinned in a neat bun, surveyed the scene with a mix of nostalgia and determination. At 97, she was as sharp as ever, her eyes twinkling with the mischief of someone half her age. Today marked the beginning of an adventure she had long dreamed of, a project to capture the untold stories of Elderglen. Maggie adjusted her glasses and set a teapot on the table, the steam curling into the air like whispers of forgotten tales. Her friends began to arrive, drawn to the scent of freshly brewed tea and the promise of good company. Timothy Robertson was the first to enter, his presence filling the room with an air of sea-salted stories. He was a retired sailor, his skin weathered by years at sea, yet his spirit remained buoyant. "Ah, Maggie," he greeted with a broad smile. "What scheme have you concocted this time?" Before she could answer, Timothy's brother, John Robertson, shuffled in. Unlike his brother, John was reserved, preferring the quietude of books to boisterous tales. His eyes held a contemplative glint as he settled into an armchair beside Timothy. Maggie poured the tea, savoring the ritualistic clinking of cups and saucers. "I've called you all here because Elderglen is brimming with stories that deserve to be told," she began, her voice firm yet inviting. "Our histories are fading with each passing year, and I believe it's time we document them." Timothy chuckled, stirring sugar into his tea. "And who better than you to lead such an endeavor? But tell me, why now?" "Because," Maggie replied, her gaze sweeping over her friends, "we owe it to those who came before us and to those who will come after to preserve our legacy." John nodded thoughtfully. "It's an ambitious undertaking, Maggie, but where do we start?" Maggie leaned forward, her excitement palpable. "With you, of course. Each of you holds a piece of Elderglen's history. Together we can weave a tapestry of our town's past." The conversation flowed with ease, punctuated by laughter and shared memories. Yet beneath the camaraderie lay a hint of skepticism. Could they truly unearth stories long buried? As the afternoon sun dipped lower in the sky, a gentle rapping at the door interrupted their gathering. Maggie rose to answer it, finding a young postman standing on the doorstep. "A letter for you, Mrs. Sinclair," he said, handing her an envelope with her name elegantly inscribed on it. "Thank you," Maggie replied, curiosity piqued. Returning to her seat, she opened the envelope with careful fingers. Her eyes widened as she scanned the contents, a letter hinting at a scandal involving Elderglen's founding family, the Prestons. "What is it?" Timothy asked, sensing the shift in Maggie's demeanor. She looked up, a mixture of intrigue and resolve in her gaze. "It seems our project might uncover more than just stories," she said cryptically. "There's mention of the Prestons, a family with deep roots in Elderglen, and a mystery that begs to be explored." John exchanged a glance with Timothy, his curiosity now fully engaged. "Perhaps there's more to this town than we ever imagined." Maggie nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Indeed, and it's up to us to find out what lies beneath the surface." As their meeting drew to a close, Maggie felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was uncertain, but with her friends by her side and a tantalizing mystery to unravel, she knew they were embarking on a journey that would change them, and Elderglen, forever. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, casting light over Elderglen's cobblestone streets and quaint cottages. Maggie awoke with a sense of anticipation tingling through her bones. The letter had stirred something within her, a longing to uncover truths long hidden beneath layers of time and tradition. At breakfast, she found herself replaying snippets of yesterday's conversation with Timothy and John. Their initial skepticism had given way to curiosity, a flicker that needed nurturing if they were to succeed in their mission. After tidying away her breakfast dishes, Maggie donned her favorite shawl, a gift from her late husband, and set off toward the last page. The bookshop was more than just a repository for stories. It was a sanctuary where memories lingered like echoes in its dusty corners. As she walked through Elderglen's bustling market square, Maggie marveled at how little had changed over the years. The same vendors hawked their wares, fresh produce displayed alongside handmade crafts, and familiar faces greeted her warmly as she passed. Her thoughts drifted back to the Prestons. They had always been an enigma, a family shrouded in prestige and power. Yet whispers suggested there were shadows lurking behind their polished facade. If anyone could shed light on their story, it was Scott Robertson, the youngest of the Robertson brothers and an avid historian. With renewed determination fueling each step forward into unknown territory ahead, both literal and metaphorical, Maggie made her way towards Scott's home on Elm Street. Upon reaching his front door, a quaint blue cottage framed by climbing roses, she knocked gently but firmly enough so as not disturb any lingering peace within its walls. Scott answered promptly. Though younger than his siblings by several decades or so, give or take, he bore striking resemblance both physically, in stature, as well intellectually, in demeanor. His keen mind had earned him reputation among townsfolk, despite youthful appearance, suggesting otherwise at first glance alone. "Maggie!" exclaimed Scott warmly upon seeing familiar face standing before him once more after what felt like ages since last encounter between them two dear friends indeed. "Good morning," replied Maggie cheerfully while offering smile bright enough melt even iciest hearts around these parts, should such exist outside realm fiction itself, perhaps. Chapter 2. Secrets Beneath the Surface. The market was alive with the hum of morning activity, a symphony of voices and clattering goods that filled Elderglen's main square. Stalls lined the cobblestone paths, their vibrant canopies fluttering in the gentle breeze. Maggie Sinclair navigated through the throng with practiced ease, her senses attuned to the familiar sights and sounds of the town she had called home for nearly a century. Her mind was still buzzing from the previous day's revelations. The letter about the Prestons had ignited a spark within her, one that burned brighter with each passing hour. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried beneath layers of history and silence. Spotting Scott Robertson near the entrance to the market, Maggie made her way over, her steps purposeful yet unhurried. Scott was engaged in conversation with an elderly vendor, his hands gesticulating animatedly as he spoke. His youthful enthusiasm was infectious, drawing smiles from those around him. "Maggie!" Scott called out as soon as he noticed her approach. His face broke into a wide grin, his blue eyes twinkling with genuine warmth. "What brings you to the market this fine morning?" Maggie returned his smile, her own eyes crinkling at the corners. "I was hoping you might spare a moment for an old friend," she replied, her tone light but laced with intent. "Always," Scott said, nodding toward a quieter corner of the market where they could speak without interruption. As they settled into a shaded alcove beneath an ancient oak tree, Maggie wasted no time in getting to the heart of the matter. "I've come across something rather intriguing," she began, choosing her words carefully. "A letter suggesting there's more to the Prestons than meets the eye." Scott's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of caution crossing his features. "The Prestons have always been complicated," he said slowly. "Their influence runs deep in Elderglen, but it's not all sunshine and roses." Maggie leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What do you know about them?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if fearing the very trees might be listening. Scott hesitated, glancing around as if weighing the wisdom of speaking openly. "They're a proud family," he said at last, choosing his words with care. "But pride often hides secrets. There are stories, whispers of things best left forgotten." "Such as?" Maggie pressed gently, sensing there was more beneath the surface. "Rumors, mostly," Scott admitted. "Old feuds, questionable dealings. Some say their wealth came at a cost others paid." He paused, meeting Maggie's gaze directly. "Be careful, Maggie. Digging into their past might stir up more than just dust." Maggie nodded, absorbing his warning with the gravity it deserved. "Thank you, Scott," she said softly. "Your insight is invaluable." Scott's demeanor softened, a hint of admiration creeping into his expression. "I trust you know what you're doing," he replied. "But remember, not all ghosts want to be disturbed." As they parted ways, Maggie's mind was awash with possibilities. Scott's words had only deepened her resolve, confirming that there was indeed something worth uncovering in Elderglen's past. Making her way back through the market, she stopped at various stalls, engaging vendors in casual conversation. Her reputation as a beloved town elder worked in her favor. People were eager to share their stories with her, snippets of history woven into their everyday lives. One such vendor, an elderly woman selling hand-knitted scarves, caught Maggie's attention with a whispered confession as she wrapped a vibrant shawl around Maggie's shoulders, a gesture both maternal and conspiratorial. "You're looking into the Prestons, aren't you?" the woman asked, her voice barely audible over the market's din. Maggie nodded cautiously. "I am," she admitted. "Do you have something to share?" The vendor glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "My grandmother used to tell tales about them," she confided. "Said there was a hidden chapter in their history, something that happened long ago but never spoken of." Maggie felt a thrill run through her veins at the revelation. "What kind of chapter?" she prompted gently. The vendor shook her head slowly, regret etched into her features. "I don't know," she confessed. "But whatever it was, it changed everything for them, and for us." With those words echoing in her mind, Maggie continued her journey through Elderglen's bustling heart, each interaction adding another thread to the tapestry she sought to unravel. By midday, she found herself back at the last page, her sanctuary amidst the storm of secrets swirling around her. As she settled into her favorite armchair by the window, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The Prestons' story was unfolding before her like a complex novel, each chapter revealing new characters and conflicts that begged for understanding. And while she knew there would be challenges ahead, obstacles and opposition from those who preferred silence over truth, Maggie felt emboldened by the knowledge that every step brought her closer to unveiling Elderglen's hidden legacy. Her friends would soon gather again at the last page, ready to embark on this journey together once more. And as they did so, fueled by camaraderie and curiosity alike, Maggie knew they would uncover not only forgotten stories, but also new beginnings for themselves and their beloved town. For now, though, with afternoon sunlight streaming through dusty windows like whispers from another time, Maggie allowed herself momentary peace amidst chaos, content knowing that even beneath surface lies untold depths waiting patiently for discovery by those brave enough seek them out. Chapter 3: Echoes of the Past. The bells of St. Bridget's Church rang out across Elderglen, their resonant chimes echoing through the crisp morning air. Maggie Sinclair paused at the church's entrance, taking a moment to appreciate the sense of serenity that enveloped the old stone building. The church had stood as a sentinel over the town for centuries, its steeple reaching toward the heavens like a finger pointing to truths yet uncovered. With a deep breath, Maggie pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The familiar scent of incense and polished wood greeted her, wrapping around her like an old friend. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the pews with vibrant hues of red and blue. Father O'Malley was kneeling at the altar, his head bowed in quiet contemplation. The years had etched lines into his face, but his eyes retained a youthful warmth that belied his age. Maggie approached him with a respectful nod, waiting until he finished his prayer before speaking. "Father O'Malley," she greeted, her voice reverberating softly in the sacred space. "Maggie," he replied, rising to his feet with a gentle smile. "What brings you to St. Bridget's this fine day?" Maggie hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. She had known Father O'Malley for decades. He was not only the town's spiritual guide, but also a keeper of its secrets. "I've been thinking about the Prestons," she began, watching his reaction closely. A flicker of recognition crossed his features, quickly masked by a more neutral expression. "Ah, the Prestons," he said slowly. "A family with deep roots in Elderglen." "Yes," Maggie agreed, stepping closer. "I've come across some information that suggests there might be more to their story than what we know." Father O'Malley nodded thoughtfully, his gaze drifting toward the stained glass windows. "Every family has its shadows," he murmured, almost to himself. "And every shadow has a story." Maggie felt a spark of hope at his words. "Can you tell me anything about them?" she asked gently. "Anything that might help me understand?" The priest remained silent for a moment, his eyes unfocused as if peering into the past. "There are things better left unspoken," he said finally, his voice tinged with regret. "But I can tell you this. Redemption is a journey, not a destination." Maggie considered his words carefully, sensing that they held deeper meaning. "Are you saying they sought redemption?" she probed. Father O'Malley met her gaze directly, his eyes filled with an intensity that belied his calm demeanor. "Redemption is something we all seek, Maggie, but it requires facing truths we'd rather leave buried. His words resonated within her, echoing the very mission she had embarked upon. "I understand," she said softly. "Thank you, Father." As they stood together in the tranquil silence of the church, Maggie felt a renewed sense of purpose. Father O'Malley's cryptic clues only fueled her determination to uncover the truth hidden within Elderglen's history. Before leaving, she paused once more at the altar, offering a silent prayer for guidance on the path ahead. As she exited into the bright morning light, her mind was already racing with possibilities. The church bells continued to toll as Maggie made her way back through Elderglen's winding streets, her thoughts consumed by Father O'Malley's words. Redemption, a simple concept yet fraught with complexity. It was both an end and a beginning, much like her quest to unearth the town's forgotten stories. Her footsteps carried her to the heart of Elderglen, where she found herself once again at the last page. The bookshop stood as a beacon amidst the bustling town square, its familiar facade welcoming her home. Inside, Timothy and John Robertson were already gathered around the table, their expressions a mix of anticipation and curiosity. A fresh pot of tea steamed in the center, surrounded by an assortment of biscuits and scones, fuel for both body and mind. "Maggie!" Timothy exclaimed as she entered, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "What news do you bring from St. Bridget's?" Maggie settled into her favorite armchair, feeling the weight of their collective expectation. "Father O'Malley had some interesting things to say," she began, recounting their conversation in careful detail. John listened intently, nodding along as he absorbed each piece of information. "Redemption," he mused aloud. "It seems our journey is as much about understanding ourselves as it is about uncovering the past." "Indeed," Maggie agreed, pouring herself a cup of tea, "but it also means facing truths that might challenge our beliefs." Timothy leaned back in his chair, his expression contemplative. "Well then," he said with a grin that belied his serious tone, "I suppose it's time we roll up our sleeves and get to work." Their laughter filled the room, a sound both comforting and invigorating, and for a moment Maggie allowed herself to bask in their camaraderie. As they discussed their next steps, ideas flowed freely between them like water over stones, each suggestion building upon the last until they formed a plan as intricate as any tapestry woven by time itself. Maggie's heart swelled with gratitude for these friends who had become family, a group bound not by blood, but by shared purpose and unwavering resolve. Together they would peel back layers of history until Elderglen's secrets lay bare beneath their scrutiny, revealing not only long-buried truths, but also new beginnings forged from understanding rather than silence or shame. And so, with afternoon sun casting golden light across worn pages stacked high upon shelves nearby, Maggie knew without doubt that they were ready for whatever lay ahead on this journey toward redemption. One story at a time. Chapter 4, Shadows in the Manor. The path to Preston Manor wound through ancient oaks, their gnarled branches arching overhead like sentinels guarding secrets of the past. Maggie Sinclair moved with purpose, her cane tapping rhythmically against the cobblestones. The air was thick with anticipation as she approached the manor's imposing gates, their wrought iron filigree casting intricate shadows on the gravel drive. Preston Manor loomed before her, its stone facade weathered by time, yet resolute in its grandeur. Ivy clung tenaciously to the walls, a living testament to the manor's enduring presence in Elderglen. Maggie paused at the threshold, her heart quickening with each step that brought her closer to the truth she sought. A butler greeted her with a courteous nod, his demeanor as polished as his attire. "Mrs. Sinclair, I presume?" he inquired, his voice smooth and practiced. "Yes," Maggie replied, offering a polite smile. "I have an appointment with Mrs. Eleanor Preston." "Of course," he said, gesturing for her to follow. "This way, please." As they traversed the opulent corridors of the manor, Maggie couldn't help but admire the portraits lining the walls, each face a silent witness to generations of Prestons who had shaped Elderglen's history. Their eyes seemed to follow her progress, their expressions inscrutable, yet somehow knowing. The butler led her to a grand parlor, its vast windows framing a view of manicured gardens bathed in autumn sunlight. Eleanor Preston awaited her there, seated regally in an armchair by the fireplace. Her silver hair was styled impeccably, and her sharp gaze missed nothing as Maggie entered the room. Maggie Sinclair, Eleanor greeted, her voice carrying both warmth and steel. I've heard much about you. All good things, I hope, Maggie replied with a twinkle in her eye, taking a seat opposite Eleanor. Eleanor's lips curved into a faint smile. Indeed, she said, your reputation precedes you. A woman of determination and wit. Maggie inclined her head graciously. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, she said. I understand your time is valuable. Eleanor waved a hand dismissively. Nonsense, she replied. When one reaches my age, time becomes both friend and foe, plentiful yet fleeting. Maggie nodded, understanding all too well the paradox of time's passage. I've come to discuss something rather delicate, she began, choosing her words with care. A letter concerning your family, specifically a scandal involving the Prestons. Eleanor's expression remained composed, though her eyes darkened slightly. Ah, yes, she said slowly. The Prestons have always been a subject of intrigue. Intrigue often masks truth, Maggie observed gently, watching Eleanor closely. True, Eleanor conceded, leaning back in her chair with an air of contemplation. But truth is a double-edged sword. It can liberate or destroy. Maggie absorbed this insight, sensing Eleanor's guardedness. I'm not here to cast judgment, she assured her, only to understand what lies beneath the surface of Elderglen's history. Eleanor studied Maggie for a moment, her gaze piercing yet unreadable. The Prestons have long been stewards of this town, she said at last, but stewardship comes with burdens, some heavier than others. Maggie listened intently, aware that Eleanor was revealing more than mere words conveyed. There was an unspoken history between them, a shared understanding forged by years of experience and resilience. Your letter hints at a scandal, Eleanor continued cautiously. I won't deny that our family has faced challenges, decisions made in times of crisis that ripple through generations. Maggie nodded encouragingly, feeling the weight of Eleanor's admission. And those decisions, she prompted gently. Eleanor hesitated before responding, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her features. They were made with the best intentions, she said softly, but intentions don't always align with outcomes. Silence settled between them like dust on forgotten tomes, a pause filled with unspoken truths and lingering regrets. Finally, Eleanor met Maggie's gaze once more, resolve shining in her eyes despite lingering shadows from past choices made under duress or desperation, perhaps. You seek answers, Eleanor acknowledged quietly, yet firmly enough convey conviction behind words spoken aloud now. And you shall find them, if you're willing to look beyond appearances and into hearts where true stories reside. Maggie's heart swelled with gratitude for this unexpected ally, an ally who understood that history was not merely facts written down, but lived experiences shaped by human frailty and courage alike. Thank you, Maggie murmured sincerely as their meeting drew near its end. Knowing full well that journey ahead would require both tenacity and compassion if they were ever hope unravel mysteries entwined within Elderglen's tapestry over decades gone by. As Maggie departed from Preston Manor later that afternoon, her mind ablaze with newfound insights gleaned from conversation shared earlier today, she felt invigorated by knowledge gained thus far along quest embarked upon alongside dear friends back home at the last page, awaiting eagerly news brought forth upon return soon enough. For now, though, with dusk descending gently across landscape surrounding manor grounds stretching outwards towards horizon beyond sight, Maggie took solace, knowing steps taken thus far had brought them closer than ever before towards uncovering truths hidden beneath layers woven intricately throughout tapestry, binding together lives intertwined within Elderglen itself. Chapter 5. The Ties That Bind. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cobbled streets of Elderglen as Maggie Sinclair made her way back to the last page. The bookshop had become a second home, a haven for secrets and stories waiting to be discovered. Her mind was a whirl of thoughts from her recent visit to Preston Manor, the conversation with Eleanor Preston playing on repeat like a record with a stuck needle. Pushing open the door, Maggie was greeted by the familiar scent of old books and freshly brewed tea. Her friends were already gathered around the large oak table that dominated the center of the shop, their faces expectant as she entered. Timothy, ever the storyteller, leaned back in his chair with an air of anticipation, while John sat quietly, his thoughtful eyes following Maggie's every move. "Ah, Maggie!" Timothy exclaimed with a grin that seemed to light up the room. "Back from the lion's den, are we? What news do you bring?" Maggie chuckled softly, her heart warming at the sight of her friends. "More questions than answers, I'm afraid," she replied, settling into her usual chair. "But also some valuable insights." John leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Eleanor Preston, what's she like?" "Formidable," Maggie admitted, pouring herself a cup of tea. "But also wise. She's seen much and carries it all with grace and a hint of regret." Timothy nodded sagely. "The Prestons have always been a force in Elderglen. It's no surprise they hold more than a few skeletons in their closets." "Indeed," Maggie agreed, taking a sip of her tea before continuing. "Eleanor spoke of burdens and decisions made in times of crisis. It seems their legacy is built on more than just wealth and power." John's brow furrowed in contemplation. "Do you think she's hiding something specific? Something related to the letter?" Maggie considered this for a moment. "I believe she's protecting something, or perhaps someone. There's a sense of unresolved history that lingers around them." The room fell silent as each of them digested Maggie's words, their minds working over the possibilities like bees in a hive. Finally, Timothy broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. "I remember my father talking about the Prestons when I was just a lad. He mentioned they were involved in some sort of scandal during the war, something hush-hush that nobody dared speak of openly." Maggie's eyes brightened with interest. "Do you recall any details?" Timothy shook his head regretfully. "Just whispers, fragments of conversations overheard at the docks or in pubs late at night. But whatever it was, it left a mark on those who knew." "Perhaps it's time we look beyond stories and seek out tangible evidence," John suggested quietly. "Documents, letters, anything that might shed light on what truly happened." Maggie nodded, appreciating John's practical approach. "We need to piece together every clue we've gathered so far, the letter, Eleanor's words, even those whispered rumors." Timothy grinned once more, his enthusiasm infectious. "Sounds like it's time for a proper investigation. I'll dig through my father's old sea chests. He kept records of everything. Perhaps there's something useful there." "And I'll search the library archives," John added with determination. "There may be historical records or town meeting minutes that reference the Prestons." Maggie smiled at her friend's eagerness and resolve. "Together, we'll uncover the truth," she said confidently, "and hopefully bring peace to those who have been burdened by silence for too long." Their conversation shifted to logistics. Who would tackle which aspect of their investigation and how they would share their findings. The camaraderie in the room was palpable, each member contributing their unique skills and perspectives to the collective effort. As dusk settled over Elderglen, casting a soft glow through the bookshop's windows, Maggie felt a deep sense of gratitude for her friends' unwavering support. They were bound not only by shared history but also by a common purpose, to illuminate the hidden corners of their beloved town and honor its legacy. As they wrapped up their meeting, Timothy raised his teacup in a toast. "To uncovering truths and forging new paths," he declared with a wink. "To Elderglen," John added solemnly. "And to friendship," Maggie concluded with warmth in her voice. Their cups clinked together softly, a promise sealed in porcelain and camaraderie. Later that evening, as Maggie prepared for bed, she reflected on the day's events and what lay ahead. The journey they had embarked upon was fraught with challenges and uncertainties, but it was also rich with potential for healing and understanding. Elderglen's stories were woven into the fabric of their lives, each thread unique yet connected to others in ways both seen and unseen. As she drifted off to sleep, Maggie knew that whatever truths they uncovered would not only reshape their understanding of the past, but also pave the way for new beginnings filled with hope and renewal. For now, though, with moonlight casting gentle shadows across her room, she allowed herself to rest in the knowledge that she was not alone on this journey. Surrounded by friends who shared her vision and determination to bring light where darkness had long prevailed. And so, with dreams of untold stories dancing through her mind, Maggie Sinclair surrendered to slumber, ready to face whatever mysteries awaited them come morning light. Chapter 6, Unraveling Threads. The morning sun bathed Elderglen in a soft golden hue, casting long shadows across its cobblestone streets. Maggie Sinclair felt the familiar pull of anticipation as she stepped out of her quaint cottage, her cane tapping rhythmically against the stone path. Today was a day for discovery, a day to delve deeper into the mysteries that bound this town together in a web of secrets and stories. Her destination was Elderglen's library, a venerable institution nestled at the heart of the town. Its weathered brick facade and grand oak doors spoke of countless generations who had sought knowledge within its walls. Maggie's heart quickened with each step closer to uncovering the truths hidden within its archives. As she entered the library, the familiar scent of aged paper and leather bindings enveloped her like an old friend. Shelves towered around her, filled with books that whispered stories of the past. She navigated the labyrinthine aisles with practiced ease until she reached the back of the library, where Mrs. Thompson, the librarian, presided over the archives. "Good morning, Mrs. Sinclair," Mrs. Thompson greeted warmly, her bespectacled eyes peering over the rims of her glasses. Her hair was a cascade of silver curls, and her demeanor was one of quiet authority. "What brings you to our little corner of history today?" Maggie smiled, feeling a kinship with the woman who had dedicated her life to preserving the town's legacy. "I'm hoping to find some records or journals that might shed light on the Prestons' past," she explained, her voice tinged with determination. Mrs. Thompson nodded knowingly. "The Prestons, always an intriguing subject," she mused. "Their history is as layered as Elderglen itself." Together, they navigated through rows of leather-bound volumes and dusty ledgers until they reached a secluded alcove where the older records were kept. Mrs. Thompson pulled out a hefty tome, its spine cracked with age, and placed it gently on a reading table. "This journal belonged to one of Elderglen's early chroniclers," she explained, opening the book to reveal pages filled with elegant script. "It might have what you're looking for." Maggie settled into a chair, her fingers tracing the faded ink as she read through entries detailing events from decades past. The journal was a treasure trove of information, accounts of town meetings, social gatherings, and even personal reflections that offered glimpses into the lives of those who had shaped Elderglen. As she delved deeper into its pages, Maggie found references to the Prestons, mentions of their influence in town affairs, and whispers of a scandal that had rocked their family during a tumultuous time in Elderglen's history. One entry, in particular, caught her eye. It described an incident involving a Preston ancestor who had made a controversial decision during wartime, one that had divided the town and left scars still felt by those who remembered. Maggie felt a thrill of discovery as she pieced together these fragments of history, her mind racing with possibilities. The journal revealed a complex tapestry of betrayal and loyalty, where alliances shifted like sands in a storm. "Mrs. Watt Thompson," Maggie called softly, her excitement barely contained. "This journal, it's incredible. It speaks of events that could explain so much about the Prestons' reputation." The librarian approached, curiosity etched into her features. "What have you found?" Maggie shared her findings, pointing out passages that hinted at clandestine meetings and decisions made under duress, decisions that had ripple effects throughout Elderglen. Mrs. Thompson listened intently, nodding as Maggie spoke. "It's fascinating how history can be both a mirror and a veil," she remarked thoughtfully, "revealing truths while concealing others." Maggie nodded in agreement. "And it's up to us to discern which is which," she added, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As they continued to explore the journal's revelations, Maggie couldn't help but wonder how these newfound insights would impact their understanding of the present. The threads they were unraveling connected not only past events, but also current relationships and dynamics within the town. Hours passed in a blur as Maggie and Mrs. Thompson pored over more documents and records, each discovery adding another layer to their investigation. It was as if they were assembling a puzzle whose pieces had been scattered across time. By late afternoon, Maggie felt both exhilarated and exhausted, a testament to the emotional weight of unearthing such deeply buried secrets. She thanked Mrs. Thompson for her invaluable assistance before making her way back to the last page. Her friends were already gathered there when she arrived, their faces lighting up with curiosity as she entered. "Well?" Timothy prompted eagerly, his eyes alight with anticipation. Maggie settled into her chair, feeling the warmth of camaraderie envelop her like a comforting embrace. "I found something remarkable," she began, recounting her discoveries with enthusiasm. John listened attentively, his analytical mind processing each detail with precision. "It seems we've uncovered more than just stories. We've tapped into the very fabric of Elderglen's identity." Timothy leaned forward, his expression one of awe mixed with determination. "And what do we do with this knowledge?" he asked. "We use it to bring understanding and healing," Maggie replied firmly. "To bridge divides that have lingered for too long." Their conversation flowed seamlessly from one topic to another, strategies for sharing their findings with the community without causing undue harm or distress, ideas for engaging townsfolk in discussions about their shared history, plans for documenting everything in a way that honored both truth and compassion. As dusk settled over Elderglen once more, casting its gentle glow through the last page's windows, Maggie felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for her friend's unwavering support, for Mrs. Thompson's dedication to preserving history, for every person who had contributed their stories along this journey toward understanding. Together, they were unraveling threads woven tightly around Elderglen's past, revealing not only hidden truths but also opportunities for growth and reconciliation among its residents. And though there were challenges yet ahead, obstacles requiring patience and perseverance, Maggie knew they would face them together, united by shared purpose and hope for brighter days yet to come. With hearts full of resolve and eyes fixed firmly on horizon beyond, Maggie Sinclair and her dear friends continued their quest toward uncovering Elderglen's deepest secrets, one story at a time. Chapter 7, The Last Sunrise. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a gentle glow across Elderglen's seaside promenade. The salty breeze carried with it the whispers of waves lapping against the shore, a soothing melody that underscored the anticipation in the air. Maggie Sinclair stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. This was the moment she had worked toward, the culmination of months spent unraveling the intricate tapestry of Elderglen's past. Her friends Timothy and John Robertson stood beside her, their expressions mirroring her own sense of fulfillment and expectation. As the townspeople assembled, Maggie marveled at the diversity of faces before her, young and old, familiar and new. Each person carried their own piece of Elderglen's history, woven together into a collective narrative that was both unique and universal. "Are you ready, Maggie?" Timothy asked, his voice steady and reassuring. Maggie nodded, her eyes scanning the crowd for familiar faces. She spotted Scott Robertson among them, his youthful enthusiasm tempered by a newfound respect for the past. Near him stood Mrs. Thompson, whose dedication to preserving history had been instrumental in their journey. Even Eleanor Preston was there, her presence a testament to the bridges they had begun to build. With a deep breath, Maggie stepped forward, feeling the weight of their shared history settle around her like a well-worn cloak. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice carrying over the sound of the waves. "Today marks not just an end, but a beginning, a chance for us to honor our past and embrace our future." The crowd listened intently as Maggie recounted their discoveries, the stories unearthed from dusty ledgers and whispered confessions, the truths revealed through conversations with those who had lived through Elderglen's most tumultuous times. She spoke of the Prestons, acknowledging both their contributions and their burdens. "In understanding their story," Maggie said, "we see how decisions made in difficult times can ripple through generations, but we also see how redemption is always within reach, if we have the courage to seek it." Timothy took up the narrative next, weaving tales from his own family's history into the broader tapestry they had uncovered. His voice was rich with emotion as he described moments of resilience and reconciliation that had shaped Elderglen's identity. John followed with insights gleaned from his research in the library archives, connecting dots between past events and present relationships. His analytical mind brought clarity to complex histories, offering perspectives that encouraged healing and understanding. As each speaker shared their piece of Elderglen's story, Maggie watched as the crowd responded with nods of recognition and murmurs of agreement. She saw tears glistening in some eyes, tears not of sadness, but of relief and hope. Finally, it was Eleanor Preston who stepped forward to speak, a gesture that surprised many in attendance. Her voice was measured but sincere as she addressed the crowd. "The Prestons have been part of this town for generations," she said softly. "We've made mistakes, some that have caused pain, but we've also strived to learn from them." Her words hung in the air like a promise, a commitment to moving forward with integrity and openness. Maggie felt a swell of gratitude for Eleanor's willingness to engage in this process of reconciliation. As the sun continued its ascent over the Atlantic, bathing Elderglen in golden light, Maggie invited others to share their own stories. One by one, townspeople stepped forward, each narrative adding another layer to their collective understanding. There were tales of love and loss, triumphs celebrated and failures mourned, moments where courage triumphed over fear or kindness prevailed against adversity. Together they painted a picture not just of individual lives, but of a community bound by shared experiences and aspirations. Maggie listened with rapt attention, feeling deeply connected to each person who spoke, to their joys and sorrows alike. It was as if time itself had folded upon them all here today, allowing past grievances dissolve into present unity beneath dawning sky above. And when at last every story had been told, or perhaps merely begun anew, Maggie knew without doubt that something profound had taken root within Elderglen's heart. A seed planted long ago now blossomed into vibrant bloom, nourished by truths uncovered through patience, perseverance, love. The storytelling circle concluded amid applause, genuine warmth. Leaving room only for hope renewal, twilight years' inhabitants embraced fully. As final rays sunlight danced across water's surface, casting shimmering reflections upon faces gathered there. Maggie Sinclair felt peace settle within soul, for she knew this moment marked more than just end project embarked upon so many months ago. It signaled beginning brighter chapter yet unwritten. And though future remained uncertain, as futures often do, Maggie believed wholeheartedly in power stories, unite, heal, transform lives. With dawn breaking horizon once more, Elderglen stood poised to embrace whatever lay ahead. Guided light, truth, compassion, friendship forged a long way. And so, with hearts full resolve, spirits lifted high, all those present watched together as sun rose higher still, illuminating path forward toward brighter days beyond imagination.